I found the truth about my husband on a Tuesday afternoon, 3 months after he passed away. It wasn't hidden in some locked drawer or secret safe. It was sitting right there in a shoebox at the back of his closet, underneath his old work boots and a stack of fishing magazines he never threw away. 30 years of marriage. 30 years of waking up beside the same man, cooking his meals, raising his children, holding his hand through good times and hard times. 30 years of thinking I knew everything there was to know about Harold James Mitchell. I was wrong. The shoebox was heavier than I expected when I pulled it down from the shelf. I remember the dust floating in the afternoon light coming through our bedroom window. I remember how quiet the house was. Our daughter had gone back to her own home after helping me sort through some of Harold's things, and I was alone for the first time in days. I sat down on the edge of our bed, the same bed we'd shared for 28 years, and I lifted the lid off that box. Inside, there were letters, dozens of them, tied together with a faded blue ribbon. There were photographs I'd never seen before, and there was a small velvet pouch that held a gold ring, a woman's ring, that didn't belong to me. My hand started shaking before I even read the first word. I picked up the photograph on top. It showed Harold as a young man, maybe 25 years old, standing in front of a little white church. He had his arm around a woman with dark curly hair and the prettiest smile I ever seen. And she was wearing a wedding dress. I turned the photograph over. On the back, in Harold's handwriting, were 2 words that changed everything I thought I knew about my life. Margaret, always. I need to take you back to the beginning so you can understand what this discovery did to me. My name is Ellen Marie Mitchell. I was born in 1952 in a small town in North Carolina, the kind of place where everybody knew everybody and secrets were supposed to be impossible to keep. My daddy worked at the textile mill and my mama stayed home raising me and my 2 brothers. We didn't have much money, but we had a good life, a simple life. I met Harold when I was 22 years old. It was the summer of 1974, and I was working as a secretary at the insurance office downtown. I'd been there about 2 years by then, typing letters and answering phones and filing papers until my fingers were sore. It wasn't exciting work, but it paid my bills and gave me a little independence, which meant everything to a young woman back then. Harold came into the office one afternoon to ask about a policy for his truck. He was 28 years old, tall and broad-shouldered, with sandy brown hair and the kindest eyes I ever seen. He had this way of looking at you like you were the only person in the room, like everything you said mattered. I remember he fumbled with his hat when he talked to me. He kept turning it around and around in his hands like he didn't know what to do with it. Later, he told me he'd never been so nervous in his life. He said something about me made him forget every word he'd ever learned. I thought that was the sweetest thing anyone had ever said to me. He came back to that office 3 more times that week. The first time he said he had questions about his policy. The second time he said he lost the paperwork. The third time he just stood there by my desk, turning his hat in his hands again, and finally asked if I'd like to get dinner with him on Saturday night. I said yes before he even finished the sentence. Our first date was at a little diner on Main Street called Rosie's. It's not there anymore. It closed down in the early 90s when Rosie passed away. But back then, it was the place where everybody went for meatloaf and mashed potatoes and the best peach cobbler you ever tasted. Harold held the door open for me when we walked in. He pulled out my chair. He asked me questions about my family, my dreams, my favorite books. He listened like every word I said was precious. By the time that peach cobbler arrived, I knew I was going to marry him. We dated for 8 months before he proposed. He did it on Christmas Eve, right there in my parents' living room, in front of the tree with all the colored lights twinkling. He got down on one knee and pulled out a little velvet box. And when he opened it, there was a tiny diamond ring that must have cost him 3 months' wages. "Harold Marie," he said, his voice shaking just a little, "I know I'm not a rich man. I know I can't give you everything you deserve, but I promise you this. I will spend every day of my life trying to make you happy. Will you marry me?" I cried so hard I could barely say yes. We got married in June of 1975, at the same church where I'd been baptized as a baby. I wore my mama's wedding dress, altered to fit my smaller frame. Harold wore a suit he'd borrowed from his brother because he couldn't afford to buy one. The reception was in my parents' backyard, with folding tables and paper plates and a sheet cake from the bakery downtown. It was the happiest day of my life. We moved into a tiny apartment above the hardware store on Oak Street. It was cramped and noisy, and the radiator clanked all night long. But I didn't care. I was Harold's wife. I was building a life with the man I loved. Those first years were lean years. Harold worked at the lumberyard, coming home every night covered in sawdust and smelling like pine. I kept working at the insurance office until I found out I was pregnant with our first child. Back then, women didn't usually keep working once they started having babies. That's just how it was. Our daughter Sarah was born in the spring of 1977. She came into the world screaming, with a full head of dark hair and her daddy's stubborn chin. Harold cried when he held her for the first time. I'd never seen him cry before that day. 2 years later, we had our son David. He was a quiet baby, always watching everything with those big, serious eyes. Harold used to say David was an old soul, like he'd been here before and already knew how the world worked. We moved out of that little apartment when David was 6 months old. Harold had been promoted to foreman at the lumberyard, and we could finally afford a house of our own. It wasn't anything fancy, just a small 3-bedroom with a chain-link fence and a backyard big enough for a swing set. But to us, it was a palace. That house is where we raised our children. It's where we celebrated birthdays and Christmases, where we argued and made up, where we sat on the porch on summer evenings watching the fireflies come out. It's where Harold taught David to throw a baseball and I taught Sarah to sew. It's where we lived our whole married life, and it's where I was sitting, 3 months after Harold's funeral, holding a photograph of my husband with another woman in a wedding dress. I need to tell you about Harold, the man I thought I knew. He was not a complicated person, or at least that's what I always believed. He liked things simple. He liked routine. Every morning he woke up at 5:30, drank 2 cups of black coffee, and read the newspaper before heading to work. Every evening he came home at 6 o'clock, kissed me on the cheek, and asked what was for dinner. He wasn't a big talker. Some men come home and tell you every detail of their day, every conversation, every thought that crossed their mind. Harold wasn't like that. He'd tell me the important things, if someone got hurt at work, if there was a problem with the shipment, but mostly he just liked to sit quiet. He'd watch the news or read his fishing magazines or work on something in the garage. I used to tease him about being a man of few words. "Harold," I'd say, "you've got more thoughts in that head of yours than a library's got books. How come you never share any of them with me?" He'd just smile that slow, gentle smile of his and say, "Some things don't need words, Ellen. Some things you just feel." I thought that was beautiful. I thought it meant he loved me so deeply that words couldn't capture it. Now I wonder if it meant he was hiding something so big that words would have destroyed everything. Harold was a good father. I want to make that clear. Whatever else I discovered about him, that part was real. He coached David's Little League team for 6 years. He walked Sarah down the aisle when she got married. He was there for every school play, every graduation, every important moment in our children's lives. And he was a good husband, too.
He never raised his voice at me, never raised his hand. He worked hard to provide for our family. When I was sick, he'd bring me tea and toast in bed. When I was sad, he'd hold me without asking questions. When I was happy, his whole face would light up like watching my joy was the best thing in the world. For 30 years, I believed I was married to an honest man. For 30 years, I believed I knew him better than anyone else on earth. I was so sure of our marriage, so confident in what we had built together. We'd weathered hard times, money troubles in the 80s, Harold's heart surgery in the 90s, the year David went through his divorce and came to live with us for a while. We'd survived all of it because we loved each other, because we trusted each other. Or so I thought. When Harold died, it was sudden. A stroke, the doctor said. He was out in the garage working on an old chair he was refinishing, and his heart just stopped. By the time I found him, he was already gone. I didn't get to say goodbye. That was the hardest part at first, not getting to say goodbye. All those things I wanted to tell him, all those words I'd saved up thinking we had more time. I wanted to thank him for the life we had built together. I wanted to tell him he was the best decision I ever made. I wanted to hold his hand one more time and feel the calluses on his palms, rough from years of hard work. Instead, I found him lying on the garage floor next to that old chair, looking peaceful, like he'd just fallen asleep. The funeral was beautiful. Our church was packed with people who loved him, co-workers, neighbors, friends we'd had for decades. The pastor talked about Harold's quiet faith, his dedication to his family, his servant's heart. Sarah and David both gave eulogies. Sarah could barely get through hers. She was crying so hard. David was stoic, like always, but I could see his hand shaking. Afterward, people came to the house with casseroles and cakes and all the things people bring when someone dies. They hugged me and told me what a wonderful man Harold was. They shared stories I'd heard 100 times and some I'd never heard at all. For 3 months, I walked through my days like a ghost. I went through the motions, eating, sleeping, answering the phone when the children called, but I wasn't really there. Part of me had died with Harold, and I didn't know how to get it back. Then Sarah suggested I start going through his things. "It might help, Mama," she said. "It might give you some closure." I didn't want closure. I wanted my husband back. But I knew she was right. His clothes were still hanging in the closet, his toothbrush still sitting in the holder by the sink. Every time I walked past them, it was like losing him all over again. So on that Tuesday afternoon, I started cleaning out Harold's closet. I gave his suits to the church. I packed up his work boots to donate. I sorted through his fishing magazines, keeping a few that had his notes scribbled in the margins. I was doing okay, holding myself together, feeling like maybe I could survive this after all. Then I found the shoebox. It was pushed way back in the corner, hidden behind some old boots and a stack of magazines. I almost missed it, but something made me reach back there, something made me pull it out, something made me lift the lid. And when I saw what was inside, the whole world I thought I knew came crashing down around me. I sat on that bed for a long time, just staring at the photograph. Harold and this woman, this Margaret, standing in front of a little white church, her in a wedding dress, him in a suit I'd never seen before, looking younger and happier than I'd ever known him to be. My mind kept trying to make sense of it. Maybe it was a costume party. Maybe it was a joke. Maybe there was some perfectly reasonable explanation that would make everything okay again. But deep down, in that place where you know the truth, even when you don't want to admit it, I already understood what I was looking at. My husband had been married before. My husband had loved someone else before me. And in 30 years of marriage, he had never said a word about it.
My hands were shaking so bad, I could barely untie the ribbon holding those letters together. The paper was old and fragile, and I was scared I might tear it. Part of me wanted to tear it. Part of me wanted to throw the whole box in the trash and pretend I'd never found it. But I couldn't do that. I had to know. The first letter was dated March 15th, 1969. That was 5 years before I even met Harold. My handwriting was pretty, with loops and curves that looked like someone had taken their time. My dearest Harold, it began. I miss you more than words can say. The days feel so long without you here. Mama says I should focus on getting better, that worrying won't help anything. But how can I not worry? How can I not count every minute until I see your face again? The doctors say I'm improving. They say the treatments are working. I try to believe them, but some days are harder than others. Some days I can barely get out of bed. But then I think about you, about our little house, about the garden we're going to plant in the spring, and I find the strength to keep going. I love you, Harold. I love you more than I ever knew it was possible to love another person. You are my heart, my home, my everything. Forever yours, Margaret. I read that letter 3 times, feeling sicker with each reading. This wasn't just some woman Harold had dated before me. This was his wife, his first wife. A woman who loved him desperately, who was fighting some kind of illness, who believed they were going to spend the rest of their lives together. What happened to her? I picked up the next letter, then the next. They were all from Margaret, all addressed to Harold, all filled with the same desperate, beautiful love. Some of them talked about her treatments. She never said exactly what was wrong with her, but it sounded serious. Some of them talked about their wedding, remembering the day with so much joy it made my chest ache. Some of them talked about the future, about children they wanted to have, about growing old together. The letters got shorter as time went on. The handwriting got shakier. You could see her getting weaker just by looking at the words on the page. The last letter was dated November 2nd, 1970. It was only a few sentences long. My darling Harold, I'm so tired, but I need you to know, loving you was the best thing I ever did. You made me so happy. Please don't be sad for too long. Please find a way to live again. I'll be waiting for you. Forever yours, Margaret. I read that letter 3 times, feeling sicker with each reading. This wasn't just some woman Harold had dated before me. This was his wife, his first wife. A woman who loved him desperately, who was fighting some kind of illness, who believed they were going to spend the rest of their lives together. What happened to her? I picked up the next letter, then the next. They were all from Margaret, all addressed to Harold, all filled with the same desperate, beautiful love. Some of them talked about her treatments. She never said exactly what was wrong with her, but it sounded serious. Some of them talked about their wedding, remembering the day with so much joy it made my chest ache. Some of them talked about the future, about children they wanted to have, about growing old together. The letters got shorter as time went on. The handwriting got shakier. You could see her getting weaker just by looking at the words on the page. The last letter was dated November 2nd, 1970. It was only a few sentences long. My darling Harold, I'm so tired, but I need you to know, loving you was the best thing I ever did. You made me.
If you're sure. I'm sure. I'll call you tomorrow. After I hung up, I gathered all the letters and photographs and put them back in the shoebox. I put the ring back in the velvet pouch. I put the lid on and slid the box under my bed, out of sight. But not out of mind. Never out of mind again. That night, I didn't sleep at all. I just lay there in the dark, in the bed I'd shared with Harold for almost 3 decades, staring at the ceiling and trying to understand how my life had become something I didn't recognize. The next few days were torture. I couldn't stop thinking about Margaret. I couldn't stop looking at her photograph, studying her face, trying to figure out who she was and why Harold had loved her so much. She was pretty. Really pretty, with dark curly hair and big eyes and a smile that made you want to smile back. She looked kind. She looked like someone you'd want to be friends with. I hated her. I know that sounds terrible. I know she'd been dead for over 50 years and she'd never done anything to hurt me. But I hated her anyway. I hated her for being Harold's first. I hated her for being so beautiful. I hated her for having a piece of my husband that I could never touch. And I hated Harold too. I hated him for keeping this secret, for letting me believe I was the only woman he ever loved, for dying before I could look him in the eyes and ask him why. But mostly, I was just hurt. Hurt in a way I couldn't describe, couldn't explain, couldn't make sense of. Like someone had reached inside my chest and rearranged everything, and now nothing fit the way it used to. I started going through the rest of Harold's things more carefully, looking for more secrets, more lies. I went through every drawer, every closet, every box in the garage. I found old tax returns and fishing licenses and receipts from hardware stores. I found old birthday cards I'd given him over the years, kept in a neat stack in his nightstand. I found a lock of Sarah's baby hair in an envelope. But I didn't find anything else about Margaret. Just that one shoebox, that one hidden piece of his past. It wasn't enough. I needed to know more. A week after finding the letters, I drove to the library. I didn't know what I was looking for exactly, just information, something that would help me understand. The librarian was a young woman, probably 30 years old, with a kind face and patient eyes. She helped me figure out how to search old newspaper records on the computer. I felt foolish, fumbling with the mouse, asking questions that probably seemed simple to her, but she didn't make me feel stupid. She just smiled and showed me what to do. I typed in Margaret Mitchell obituary, 1970. Too many results. Mitchell is a common name. I tried again. Margaret Mitchell, North Carolina, obituary, 1970. Still too many. I didn't even know her maiden name. I didn't know what town she lived in. I didn't know anything, really, except what I'd read in those letters. Then I remembered the photograph of the little white church. On the sign out front, barely visible, were the words First Baptist Church of Cedar Falls. Cedar Falls.
That was a tiny town about an hour south of here. I'd driven through it a few times over the years, but never stopped. I searched for Margaret, Cedar Falls, North Carolina, 1970. And there she was. Margaret Ellen Patterson, age 24, beloved wife of Harold James Mitchell, passed away on November 2nd, 1970, after a long illness. She was a member of First Baptist Church of Cedar Falls and a beloved member of her community. She is survived by her husband, her parents, Robert and Helen Patterson, and her sister, Elizabeth Patterson. Services will be held. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. Margaret Ellen Patterson. Her middle name was Ellen. My name is Ellen. I sat back in my chair, feeling like I might be sick. Was that a coincidence? It had to be a coincidence. Harold couldn't have married me because I had the same name as his dead wife. That would be crazy. That would be wrong. But the thought lodged in my brain and wouldn't let go. What if Harold never really loved me at all? What if I was just a substitute, a replacement, a way to fill the hole that Margaret left behind? I drove home in a daze, barely seeing the road. When I got back, I went straight to the bedroom and pulled out that shoebox again. I spread the photographs across the bed and looked at them one by one, searching for something I might have missed. That's when I noticed it. In one of the pictures, Margaret was standing in a garden, holding a basket of tomatoes. She was wearing a blue dress with white flowers on it. I had a dress just like that. Harold had bought it for me on our 5th anniversary. He said it reminded him of summer. In another picture, Margaret was sitting on a porch swing reading a book. I looked at her more closely, at the way she had her legs tucked up underneath her, at the way she was twirling a strand of hair around her finger. I sat like that when I read. I twirled my hair the same way. Was it possible I was just a copy of his first wife living in her shadow without even knowing it? I started making a list. Crazy, I know, but I couldn't help it. I needed to see the similarities written down. Needed to know if I was imagining things or if my whole marriage had been based on a lie. Margaret had dark hair. So did I. Margaret was short and slender. So was I. Margaret loved gardening. So did I. Margaret's middle name was Ellen. My first name was Ellen. Margaret died in November. Harold always got sad in November. The more I wrote, the sicker I felt. I thought about our wedding, about Harold standing at the altar watching me walk down the aisle. I'd always treasured the look on his face that day, the wonder, the joy, the tears in his eyes. I thought he was looking at me like I was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. Now I wondered if he was looking at me and seeing her. I thought about all the times Harold had called me darling. I'd always loved that. It seemed so old-fashioned and sweet. But Margaret's letters all ended with her calling Harold my darling. Was that where he got it? Was he hearing her voice every time he said it to me? I thought about our house, about the garden they'd planted in the backyard, about the porch swing Harold had built for our 10th anniversary. Had he built the same swing for Margaret? Had they sat in it together, dreaming about the future before everything went wrong? The questions kept coming, wave after wave, and I couldn't stop them. I barely ate that week. I barely slept. Sarah called every day, and I told her I was fine, just tired, just adjusting to life without her father. She offered to come stay with me, and I said no, I needed time alone. What I needed was answers, but I didn't know how to get them. Harold was dead. Margaret was dead. Everyone who knew the truth was gone. Almost everyone. I remembered the obituary. Margaret was survived by her parents and her sister Elizabeth. The parents were probably dead by now. They'd be over 100 if they weren't, but the sister might still be alive. Elizabeth Patterson. I went back to the library the next day and searched for her. It took a while, but eventually I found what I was looking for. Elizabeth Patterson had married a man named Thomas White in 1975. They had lived in Cedar Falls until 1998 when they moved to a retirement community in Wilmington. Thomas had died in 2015, but Elizabeth was still alive. I found her address and phone number in a public records database. I wrote them down on a little piece of paper and carried it around in my pocket for 3 days, trying to decide what to do. Part of me said to leave it alone. Harold was gone. Margaret was gone. What good would it do to dig up old pain, old memories, old wounds? But another part of me, the bigger part, needed to know the truth. I needed to understand who my husband really was, who I had really been married to all those years. I needed to know if my whole life had been a lie. On the 4th day, I picked up the phone and dialed the number. A woman answered on the 3rd ring. Her voice was thin and elderly, but there was a sharpness to it, an intelligence that hadn't faded with age. Hello? Hello? My voice was shaking. Is this Elizabeth White? Elizabeth Patterson White? There was a pause. Who's calling? My name is Ellen Mitchell. I was married to Harold Mitchell. The silence on the other end of the line stretched out so long, I thought she might have hung up. Then, very quietly, she said, I wondered if you'd ever call. My heart nearly stopped. You knew about me? I knew he got remarried, yes. I saw it in the newspaper years ago. And I knew he'd never told you about Margaret. How did you know that? Another pause, then a heavy sigh. Because if he had, you wouldn't be calling me now. You would have called years ago. She was right. Of course she was right. Mrs. White, Elizabeth, please. Elizabeth. I found some letters and photographs after Harold passed away. Letters from Margaret. And I have so many questions. I don't know what to do with them. I don't know how to make sense of any of this. Elizabeth was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. I'm 82 years old, Mrs. Mitchell. I don't have many years left, and I've been carrying this story around for a long time. Maybe too long. She paused. If you want to know about my sister, I'll tell you. But I have to warn you, the truth isn't always what we hope it will be. I need to know. Please, I need to understand. Then come see me. I don't do this kind of thing over the phone. Come to Wilmington, and I'll tell you everything. We made plans for me to visit that Saturday. When I hung up the phone, my hands were shaking so bad I had to sit down. I was going to find out the truth. I just wasn't sure I was ready to hear it. The drive to Wilmington took almost 3 hours. I left early that Saturday morning before the sun was fully up, while the roads were still quiet, and the world was soft with that gray light that comes just before dawn. I'd barely slept the night before, tossing and turning, rehearsing questions in my head that I wanted to ask Elizabeth. But mostly, I was scared. Scared of what I might learn. Scared of how it might change everything I thought I knew. Scared that by the end of this day, I wouldn't recognize my own life anymore. I stopped at a gas station about halfway there and bought a cup of coffee. It was bitter and too hot, but I drank it anyway, needing something to keep me alert. The woman behind the counter smiled at me and said, "You look tired, honey. Long trip?" Something like that, I said. She had no idea. The retirement community where Elizabeth lived was a nice place. Neat little condos arranged around a central courtyard with benches and flower gardens. I parked my car and sat there for a few minutes, just breathing, trying to calm my racing heart. You can still turn around, I told myself. You can go home and forget about all this. You can put that shoebox in the attic and never look at it again. But I knew I couldn't do that. I knew the questions would eat me alive if I didn't get answers. I knew I'd spend the rest of my life wondering. So I got out of the car and walked to Elizabeth's door. She answered after the second knock. She was small and thin, with white hair cut short and practical, and eyes that looked like they'd seen a lot of life. She was leaning on a cane, but she stood straight with a kind of quiet dignity that reminded me of my own mother. Mrs. Mitchell? Ellen, please. She nodded slowly, studying my face in a way that made me feel like she was looking for something. Then she stepped back and opened the door wider. Come in. Her condo was small but comfortable, filled with books and photographs and the kind of comfortable furniture that comes from decades of making a home. She led me to a sitting area by the window and gestured for me to take a seat on the sofa. She lowered herself into a rocking chair across from me, moving slowly but determinedly. Can I get you something? Tea? Water? No, thank you. I'm fine. She nodded again, settling back into her chair. For a long moment, she just looked at me, her eyes moving over my face like she was memorizing it. Then she said finally, You look like her. Not exactly, but there's something. Around the eyes, maybe? The way you hold yourself. My stomach tightened. Margaret? Yes, my sister. She paused. Harold always did have a type, I suppose. I didn't know what to say to that. I didn't know if it was meant to hurt or if it was just an observation. Either way, it landed like a stone. Tell me about her. Please, I need to understand.
Elizabeth was quiet for a moment, her gaze drifting to the window. Outside, a bird was singing, and the morning light was soft and golden. Margaret was my older sister, she began. She was 2 years ahead of me, but we were close, so close. She was the kind of person everyone loved, bright and warm and full of life. She had this way of making people feel special, like they mattered, like they were the only person in the room. I thought of Harold, of the way he used to look at me across the dinner table. Was that something he'd learned from Margaret? She met Harold in the summer of 1966. She was working at the Five and Dime store in Cedar Falls, and he came in one day looking for a birthday present for his mother. Margaret helped him pick out a scarf. I still remember her telling me about it that night. She said he was the handsomest man she'd ever seen, and the kindest. She said when he smiled at her, she felt like the whole world got brighter. I could picture it. I could picture exactly what Margaret must have felt, because I'd felt the same thing the first time Harold smiled at me. They started courting that summer. Harold was working at a sawmill up in the mountains, so he could only come down on weekends. But every Friday night, there he'd be, standing on our front porch with flowers or candy or just himself, ready to take Margaret somewhere special. They'd go to the movies or have dinner at the diner or just walk around town holding hands. Elizabeth smiled, a sad, distant smile. I was jealous of her, I'll admit. I was 20 years old and hadn't had a single serious boyfriend. And here was Margaret with this wonderful man who looked at her like she hung the moon. But I couldn't stay jealous for long. She was so happy, and Harold was so good to her. He was exactly what she deserved. When did they get married? I asked. June of 1968. It was a small wedding. Our family didn't have much money, but it was beautiful.
Margaret made her own dress. Our mama cried through the whole ceremony, and Harold, I've never seen a man look at a woman the way Harold looked at Margaret that day, like she was the answer to every prayer he'd ever prayed. I thought of my own wedding day, of Harold watching me walk down the aisle. Had he looked at me the same way, or had he been thinking of her, even then? They moved into a little house on Maple Street. It had green shutters and a front porch and a backyard big enough for a garden. Margaret planted tomatoes and peppers and sunflowers. She said she wanted to grow things, to nurture things. She said she wanted to fill that house with life. She paused, and I saw something change in her face. The warmth faded, replaced by something heavier, something darker. Then she got sick. What was it? I asked softly. Her letters mentioned treatments, but she never said what was wrong. Elizabeth took a deep breath. Cancer. Breast cancer. She found the lump in the fall of 1969, about a year and a half after they got married. At first, the doctors thought they could treat it. She had surgery and then radiation, and for a while it seemed like it might be working. She shook her head slowly, but it wasn't. The cancer spread. By the spring of 1970, it was everywhere. The doctor said there was nothing more they could do. They sent her home to die. I felt tears prickling at the backs of my eyes. I thought of those letters, of Margaret's handwriting getting shakier and shakier as the months went on. I thought of her trying to stay positive, trying to hold on to hope, even as her body was failing her. Harold was devoted to her, Elizabeth said. He took care of her every single day. He'd come home from work and sit by her bedside for hours, reading to her, talking to her, just holding her hand. When she couldn't eat solid food anymore, he'd make her soup and feed her with a spoon. When she couldn't walk anymore, he'd carry her outside so she could feel the sunshine on her face. She looked at me, and I saw tears in her eyes now, too. He loved her so much, Ellen. I need you to understand that. What they had was real. It was the most beautiful, heartbreaking love I've ever seen. I believe you, I whispered, and I did. I could feel it in every word Elizabeth spoke, in every letter Margaret had written. Harold and Margaret had loved each other deeply, truly, completely. And suddenly, instead of hating Margaret, I felt something else, something closer to sorrow, for her, for Harold, for the life they should have had. Margaret died on November 2nd, 1970. It was a Sunday. Harold was holding her hand when she passed. He told me later that her last words were, "I love you," that she smiled at him right before she closed her eyes. She wiped at her cheeks with a trembling hand. After the funeral, Harold was broken. There's no other word for it. He stopped eating, he stopped sleeping, he stopped going to work. He just sat in that little house on Maple Street surrounded by Margaret's things, waiting to die himself. What happened? I asked. Our family tried to help him. Mama would bring him food. Daddy would sit with him on the porch. I'd come over and try to get him to talk, but nothing worked. He was like a ghost, just drifting through the days, not really there at all. Elizabeth sighed heavily. After about 6 months, he came to see us. It was the first time he'd left that house in weeks. He sat down in our living room and told us he was leaving Cedar Falls. He said he couldn't stay, couldn't look at that house, couldn't walk down those streets, couldn't exist in a place where everything reminded him of her. Where did he go? I asked, though I already knew the answer. He moved up north, to your town. He said he wanted to start fresh, somewhere no one knew him, somewhere he could try to forget. She looked at me with something that might have been pity. He wanted to forget, Ellen. That's why he never told you about Margaret. That's why he kept it a secret all those years. He wasn't trying to deceive you. He was trying to survive. I sat with that for a moment, letting it sink in. Harold hadn't kept Margaret a secret because he was ashamed of her or because he didn't trust me. He'd kept her a secret because the memory was too painful to carry into his new life. Because talking about her would have meant reliving the worst thing that ever happened to him. But I still had questions. So many questions. "Elizabeth," I said slowly, "there's something I need to ask you, and I need you to be honest with me." "Of course." I took a deep breath. "Did Harold marry me because he reminded him of Margaret?" Elizabeth was quiet for a long time, so long that I started to think she wasn't going to answer. Then she leaned forward in her rocking chair and looked me straight in the eyes. "I don't know," she said. "I truly don't. I never met you before today. I only saw one photograph of you years ago and a newspaper announcement about your wedding. And yes, I noticed the resemblance. I noticed that your name was Ellen, like Margaret's middle name. I wondered about it. I wondered if Harold was trying to recreate what he'd lost." My heart felt like it was being squeezed in a fist. "But here's what I do know," Elizabeth continued. "I know that Harold loved my sister with everything he had, and I know that when she died, a part of him died too. But I also know that he chose to keep living. He chose to move forward. He chose to marry you and build a family with you and spend 30 years at your side." She reached out and took my hand. Her fingers were thin and cool, but her grip was surprisingly strong. "Whatever his reasons were for marrying you, Ellen, he stayed. He stayed for 30 years. He had children with you. He built a life with you. That means something. That has to mean something." I looked down at our joined hands, at her papery skin and my weathered knuckles. Two old women, connected by a man we'd both lost in different ways. "There's something else," Elizabeth said. "Something I think you should see." She let go of my hand and reached for a small wooden box on the table beside her chair. She opened it and pulled out a folded piece of paper, yellowed with age. "Harold wrote this to me after Margaret died," she said. "I've kept it all these years. I don't know why exactly. Maybe I was waiting for this moment." She handed me the paper, and I unfolded it with trembling fingers. "Dear Elizabeth," it read, "I'm writing to tell you that I'm leaving Cedar Falls. I know this might seem sudden, but I can't stay here any longer. Every corner of this town holds a memory of Margaret, and those memories are killing me as surely as the cancer killed her. I want you to know that I will never forget your sister. She was the love of my life, and losing her was the worst thing that ever happened to me. I don't know if I'll ever love anyone like that again. I don't know if I even want to. But I also know that Margaret wanted me to live. Her last letter told me to find a way to be happy again, and I'm going to try. I owe her that much. I'm not taking anything with me except a few photographs and her letters. I want to remember her as she was, not as she became at the end. I want to carry her in my heart, not in my baggage. Please tell your parents that I love them and that I'm sorry I couldn't stay. And please take care of yourself, Elizabeth. You were a good sister to Margaret and a good friend to me. Yours always, Harold." I read the letter twice, then a third time, and somewhere in the middle of that third reading, something shifted inside me. Harold hadn't forgotten Margaret. He'd carried her with him every single day, but he'd also tried to honor her wish, her dying wish, to find happiness again. And he had found it. With me. Maybe I wasn't a replacement for Margaret. Maybe I was the answer to her prayer. Ellen, Elizabeth said softly, I know this is a lot to take in, and I know you're probably feeling confused and hurt and angry, but I want to tell you something, and I want you to really hear it. I looked up at her, my eyes blurry with tears. Harold Mitchell was a good man. He loved my sister with all his heart, and when he lost her, he was destroyed. But he put himself back together. He built a new life. He found the strength to love again, even though it must have terrified him, even though he must have been scared every single day that he might lose you too. She squeezed my hand again. That takes courage, Ellen. That takes incredible courage, and the fact that he chose you, that he spent 30 years at your side, that tells me everything I need to know about how much you meant to him. I sat there, crying quietly, feeling something loosen in my chest. Not forgiveness exactly. I wasn't quite ready for that, but something close to understanding. There's one more thing, Elizabeth said. One more thing I think you should know. What is it? She hesitated, like she was weighing whether or not to tell me. Then she seemed to make a decision. About 5 years ago, I got a letter in the mail. No return address. The postmark was from your town. My breath caught. It was from Harold, the first time he'd contacted me since leaving Cedar Falls. What did it say? Elizabeth closed her eyes for a moment, remembering. It said, Dear Elizabeth, I hope this letter finds you well. I wanted you to know that I kept my promise to Margaret. I found happiness again. Her name is Ellen, and she has been my partner, my companion, and my best friend for almost 30 years. She gave me 2 beautiful children and a life I never thought I'd have. I will always love my sister, but I want you to know that I love my wife too. They exist in different chambers of my heart, and neither one diminishes the other. Thank you for understanding. Yours always, Harold. I couldn't speak. I couldn't breathe. I just sat there, tears streaming down my face as the weight of those words settled over me. He loved me. Not instead of Margaret, not as a substitute for Margaret, but alongside her, in a different chamber of his heart. He loved me. He sent a photograph with the letter, Elizabeth said. Do you want to see it? I nodded, not trusting my voice. She reached into the wooden box again and pulled out a photograph. She handed it to me, and I looked at it through my tears. It was Harold and me, standing in our backyard on our 25th wedding anniversary. Sarah had taken the picture. I remembered the moment perfectly. Harold had his arm around my waist, and I was leaning into him, and we were both laughing at something David had said. We looked happy, genuinely, truly happy. On the back of the photograph, in Harold's handwriting, were 4 words. My Ellen, my happiness. I drove home from Wilmington in a daze. The highway stretched out before me, mile after mile of gray asphalt and green trees and blue sky, but I barely saw any of it. My mind was somewhere else entirely, turning over everything Elizabeth had told me, everything I'd read in that letter, everything I'd seen in that photograph. My Ellen, my happiness. Those 4 words kept echoing in my head, playing on repeat like a song I couldn't shake. Harold had written them. Harold had meant them. After everything, after Margaret, after the grief, after 30 years of carrying a secret he couldn't bring himself to share, he had still found a way to love me. Not instead of her, alongside her. They exist in different chambers of my heart, and neither one diminishes the other. I pulled off the highway about an hour from home because I couldn't see through my tears anymore. I sat in a gas station parking lot, gripping the steering wheel, sobbing so hard my whole body shook. It wasn't sad crying exactly. It wasn't happy crying either. It was something in between, a release of everything I'd been holding on to for the past few weeks. The shock, the hurt, the confusion, the anger. It all came pouring out of me in that parking lot, surrounded by strangers, filling up their tanks, completely unaware that an old woman in a blue sedan was falling apart and putting herself back together at the same time. When the tears finally stopped, I felt lighter, emptied out, like I had been carrying a heavy stone in my chest and someone had finally lifted it away. I wiped my face with a napkin from the glove compartment, took a deep breath, and pulled back onto the highway. By the time I got home, the sun was setting. The sky was painted in shades of orange and pink and purple, the kind of sunset Harold always loved. He used to sit on the porch and watch them, quiet and still, like he was memorizing every color. I wondered now if those sunsets reminded him of Margaret, if he'd watched them with her on that little porch in Cedar Falls, dreaming about the future they'd never have. If every sunset was a memory and a morning and a hope all wrapped into one. I parked in the driveway and sat there for a moment, looking at our house. The house where we'd raised our children, the house where we'd celebrated anniversaries and survived arguments and built a life together, brick by brick, year by year. It looked different to me now. Not worse, just different, like I was seeing it clearly for the first time. I went inside and made myself a cup of tea. I sat at the kitchen table in the chair that had always been mine, and I looked at the empty chair across from me. Harold's chair. He'd sat there every night for 30 years, eating dinner, reading the paper, asking me about my day. "Why didn't you tell me?" I said out loud, even though no one was there to hear. "Why did you keep it a secret for so long?" The house was quiet. No answer came. But as I sat there sipping my tea, I started to understand. Harold wasn't a complicated man. He didn't talk about his feelings easily. He didn't process things by sharing them. He processed them by carrying them, by working through them in his own quiet way. Telling me about Margaret would have meant opening a wound that had never fully healed. It would have meant explaining a grief so deep that words couldn't capture it. It would have meant risking everything he'd built in his new life, everything he'd worked so hard to create. He wasn't trying to deceive me. He was trying to protect himself. And maybe, in his own way, he was trying to protect me too. I thought about what Elizabeth had said. He wanted to forget Ellen. He wasn't trying to deceive you. He was trying to survive. Survive. That word stuck with me. Harold had survived the worst thing that could happen to a person, watching the love of your life die slowly, painfully, while you stood by helpless. He'd survived the grief and the loneliness and the despair. He'd survived leaving everything he knew and starting over somewhere new. And then he'd met me. I wondered what that must have been like for him, meeting me, falling in love with me, allowing himself to hope again. It must have been terrifying. Every time he let himself care about me, he must have been thinking about how much it would hurt if he lost me too. Every time he started to feel happy, he must have been bracing himself for it to be taken away. But he did it anyway. He married me anyway. He built a life with me anyway. That took courage. Elizabeth was right. That took incredible courage. I finished my tea and washed the cup in the sink. Then I went to the bedroom and pulled the shoebox out from under the bed. I sat down on the quilt and looked at the contents one more time. The letters, the photographs, the ring, Margaret's things, Harold's secret. I picked up the photograph of their wedding day and really looked at it this time, not with jealousy or hurt, but with something closer to compassion. Margaret was so young in this picture, so beautiful, so full of hope for a future she'd never get to see. She didn't deserve what happened to her. Nobody does. "I'm sorry you didn't get more time," I whispered to the photograph. "I'm sorry you had to leave him so soon." I looked at Harold in the picture, young and happy, with his whole life ahead of him. He had no idea what was coming, no idea that in just 2 years, his whole world would fall apart. "Thank you," I said, surprising myself. "Thank you for loving him first. Thank you for teaching him how to love, because whatever you gave him, he gave it to me too." The words felt strange in my mouth, but also right, true. Margaret and I weren't rivals. We weren't competing for Harold's heart. We were two women who had loved the same man in different times, in different ways. And both of those loves were real. I put the photograph back in the box and picked up Margaret's ring. The gold was worn, smooth from years of handling, and the diamond caught the lamplight in tiny sparkles. I thought about Harold holding this ring all those years, keeping it close, remembering. I slipped the ring onto my finger just to see how it felt. It fit perfectly, almost the same size as my own wedding ring. I held my hand up and looked at the two rings side by side. Mine on the left hand, Margaret on the right. 2 women, 1 man. A lifetime of love. I took off Margaret's ring and put it back in the velvet pouch. Then I put everything back in the shoebox, closed the lid, and slid it under the bed. I wasn't ready to get rid of it. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I was ready to stop being angry about it. The next morning, I called Sarah. She answered on the second ring, sounding worried. "Mama, is everything okay? You've been so quiet lately." "I'm fine, sweetheart. I just wanted to talk to you about something. Can you come over this afternoon?" "Of course. Is something wrong?" "No, nothing's wrong. I just have a story I need to tell you about your father." Sarah was at my door by 2 o'clock, her face tight with concern. She was 50 years old now, hard to believe, with her father's stubborn chin and my mother's gentle eyes. She'd been through a lot in her life, a divorce, a career change, the struggle of raising teenagers on her own. But she was strong, stronger than she knew.
I sat her down at the kitchen table and made us both cups of tea. Then I told her everything. About the shoebox, about Margaret, about the letters and photographs and the ring, about Elizabeth and the trip to Wilmington, about Harold's letter. They exist in different chambers of my heart. Sarah listened without interrupting, her tea growing cold in her hands. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "Mama," she finally said, "are you okay?" "I am now, but it took me a while to get here." She reached across the table and took my hand. "I can't believe Daddy never told us. All those years." He was trying to protect himself and us. He didn't want his grief to touch our lives. But still, 30 years? That's a long time to keep a secret. "Yes," I agreed. "It is." Sarah was quiet again, processing. Then she asked, "Do you think he loved her more than you?"
The question hit me somewhere deep, in that tender place where all our insecurities live. A week ago, I would have said yes. A week ago, I was convinced that I was just a substitute, a replacement, a shadow of something Harold had lost. But now I knew better. I think he loved her differently, I said slowly, choosing my words with care. She was his first love, and they were so young, and their time together was cut short. That kind of love stays with you forever. It doesn't fade just because the person is gone. I paused, looking at the photograph on the kitchen wall. Harold and me on our 30th anniversary, gray-haired and wrinkled and smiling like teenagers. But what he and I had was different. It was built over time. It was built through hard work and compromise and showing up for each other every single day. It wasn't dramatic or tragic. It was steady. It was real. I looked at Sarah and smiled, even though my eyes were filling with tears. Your father loved me, sweetheart. Maybe not the same way he loved Margaret, but just as much, just as truly. And I know that now. I know it in my bones. Sarah squeezed my hand, her own eyes glistening. How did you get there, Mama? How did you stop being angry? I thought about the question. It deserved an honest answer. I had to let go of what I thought my marriage was supposed to look like. I had this picture in my head, this perfect picture of a husband and wife who told each other everything, who had no secrets, who were each other's one and only. And when I found out that wasn't true, it felt like my whole life was a lie. I took a sip of my tea, which had gone lukewarm. But then I realized that picture was never real in the first place. No marriage is perfect. No person can give you everything. Harold had a past before me, and that past shaped who he became. It shaped the man I fell in love with, the man I married, the father of my children. I looked at Sarah, wanting her to understand. Margaret wasn't my enemy. She was part of the journey that brought Harold to me. And being angry at her or at him for something that happened before I even met him was only hurting me. Sarah nodded slowly. That's really wise, Mama. I don't know if I could have gotten there. It took time, and it took Elizabeth. Talking to someone who knew them both, who could tell me the truth about what they had, that helped more than I can say. We sat in silence for a while, just being together, letting the weight of the conversation settle around us. Outside, a cardinal was singing in the oak tree, the same tree Harold had planted the year David was born. What are you going to do with the letters and photographs? Sarah asked eventually. I don't know yet. For now, I'm keeping them. They're part of your father's story, which means they're part of our story too. Can I see them sometime? I hesitated. The photographs and letters felt private, intimate. They belonged to Harold and Margaret, not to me. But they were also part of Sarah's history, part of understanding who her father really was. Yes, I said finally. When you're ready, when you want to. Sarah came around the table and hugged me, the way she used to when she was a little girl. I held on to her, breathing in the familiar scent of her shampoo, feeling the strong beating of her heart. I love you, Mama. I love you too, sweetheart, more than you know. After Sarah left,
I went out to the backyard. The garden was a mess. I hadn't touched it since Harold died. Weeds were taking over the flower beds, and the tomato plants had withered on the vine. Harold used to help me with the weeding. He said it was meditative, pulling up the things that didn't belong so the beautiful things could grow. I got down on my knees and started pulling weeds. The dirt was cool and damp under my fingers. The smell of earth filled my nose, familiar and grounding. I worked slowly, methodically, thinking about Harold, thinking about Margaret, thinking about all the things I'd learned in the past few weeks. Grief is such a strange thing. It doesn't follow rules or timelines. It shows up when you least expect it and disappears just as quickly. You can go weeks feeling fine, and then something small, a song on the radio, a smell in the air, a photograph you didn't know existed can knock you right back down again. But grief is also a teacher. It shows you what matters. It strips away the pretense and the pettiness and leaves you with the raw, essential truth of your life. The truth of my life was this: I had loved a man who loved me back. I had built a family and a home and a legacy that would outlive us both. I had been happy, genuinely, truly happy for most of my 68 years on this earth. That was more than many people could say. That was more than enough. I worked in the garden until the sun started to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. When I finally stood up, my knees aching and my hands covered in dirt, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. Not the absence of pain. The pain was still there, a dull ache in my chest that I suspected would never fully go away, but peace alongside the pain, acceptance alongside the grief. Margaret was gone. Harold was gone. The secrets were out. And somehow, despite everything, I was going to be okay. I went inside and washed my hands at the kitchen sink. Then I walked through the house, touching the walls, the furniture, the picture frames, all the things that Harold and I had collected over 30 years of marriage. Our life, our story.
I stopped in front of our wedding photograph, hanging in the hallway. Harold in his borrowed suit, me in my mother's dress. Both of us young and hopeful and completely unaware of what life had in store. "I forgive you," I said softly, "for keeping your secret, for not trusting me with the truth. I forgive you." I touched the glass gently, tracing the outline of Harold's face. "And I want you to know something else. I'm glad you found happiness again. I'm glad you chose me. I'm glad we had 30 years together, even if they weren't perfect, even if there were things you couldn't tell me." I felt tears sliding down my cheeks, but I let them fall. I was done fighting the grief, done trying to be strong all the time. I loved you, Harold. I love you still. And wherever you are, wherever Margaret is, I hope you're together. I hope you're at peace. I stood there for a long time, just looking at the photograph, remembering. Then I wiped my eyes, took a deep breath, and went to the kitchen to make dinner. Life goes on. That's what I've learned. No matter how much you lose, no matter how much you grieve, life goes on. And you can either let it drag you behind it, or you can get up and walk alongside it. I chose to walk. The days that followed were different. Not easier exactly, but different. I started going through Harold's things again, but this time without the desperation, without the need to find more secrets. I sorted his clothes with love instead of suspicion. I packed up his tools with gratitude instead of resentment. I donated his fishing gear to a youth program at the church, imagining some young boy learning to cast a line the way Harold had taught David. I called David and told him the story too. He didn't react the way Sarah had. He was quieter, more internal, the way he'd always been. But a few days later, he called me back. "Mom," he said, "I've been thinking about what you told me about Dad and Margaret." "Yes?" I think it explains a lot about why he was the way he was, why he sometimes seemed sad for no reason, why he held on to us so tight." "What do you mean?" David was quiet for a moment. "When I was a kid, I used to think Dad was just careful, protective. But now I realize he was scared. He was scared of losing us the way he lost her." I closed my eyes, feeling the truth of my son's words. "I think you're right," I said. "I think he spent his whole life terrified that it would happen again." "But it didn't," David said. "He got to keep us. He got to keep you for 30 years. "Yes," I whispered. "He did." "That has to count for something, Mom. All those years of love, all those years of being there. The secret doesn't erase that." I smiled through my tears. "When did you get so wise?" "I had good teachers." I talked to Elizabeth on the phone a few more times over the next few weeks. She became something like a friend, the only person in the world who understood both sides of Harold's story. She told me more about Margaret, her favorite books, her sense of humor, the way she sang off-key in the church choir, but nobody minded because she was so full of joy. And I told her about Harold, the Harold I knew, the father who coached Little League, the husband who brought me tea when I was sick, the man who sat on the porch watching sunsets, carrying his first love in one chamber of his heart while the second love sat beside him, holding his hand. "Thank you," Elizabeth said during one of our conversations. "Thank you for not hating him, for not hating her." "I couldn't," I said honestly. "Not after everything I learned. They loved each other so much, and they lost each other so young. How could I hate that?" "Some people would. Some people can't share, not even with a ghost." I thought about that. Maybe I would have felt that way once, before I understood. But now I just feel grateful. Grateful that Margaret loved him first, taught him how to love. Grateful that he found the courage to love again. Grateful that I got to be the one he chose. Elizabeth was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I think Margaret would have liked you. I really do." That meant more to me than I could express.
6 months have passed since I found that shoebox in Harold's closet. 6 months since my whole world turned upside down and then slowly, painfully, righted itself again. I'm sitting on the porch now, in the rocking chair Harold bought me for our 20th anniversary. The evening air is soft and warm, carrying the scent of honeysuckle from the neighbor's fence. The sky's doing that thing it does in late summer, turning gold and pink and purple all at once, like God is showing off. Harold would have loved the sunset. He would have sat here beside me, quiet and still, watching the colors change. He wouldn't have said anything. He never did. But I would have felt his presence, solid and reassuring, like an anchor, holding me steady. I miss him every day. That hasn't changed. I don't think it ever will. But the missing is different now. It's softer, gentler, less like a wound and more like a scar. Still there, still tender sometimes, but healed enough to live with. I keep Margaret's ring in my jewelry box now, right next to my own wedding ring. Some people might think that's strange. Some people might say I should have thrown it away or given it back to Elizabeth or buried it somewhere and forgotten about it. But I couldn't do that. That ring is part of Harold's story, which means it's part of my story too. It belongs with me now. Just like the letters and the photographs and all the other pieces of a life I'm still trying to understand. I read those letters sometimes. Late at night when I can't sleep, Margaret's words are so full of love, so full of hope, even when she was dying. She believed in Harold. She believed in their future, even when there wasn't going to be one. She believed that love could survive anything, even death. And maybe she was right. Maybe love does survive. Maybe it transforms, changes shape, finds new places to live. Maybe the love Harold had for Margaret didn't disappear when she died. It just moved into a different chamber of his heart, making room for something new while still holding on to something old. I like to think that's what happened. I like to think that Harold carried both of us with him all those years. Margaret in his memories, me in his present. Both of us loved, both of us treasured, both of us real. Elizabeth and I have become friends. Real friends. We talk on the phone every week or two, sharing stories about our lives, our families, our aches and pains. She tells me about her grandchildren, and I tell her about mine. She complains about the food at her retirement community, and I complain about the arthritis in my hands. We laugh together. We cry together. We remember Harold together. She's the only person who knew him before me. The only person who can tell me what he was like as a young man, before grief changed him, before he built walls around his heart. Talking to her feels like filling in the missing pieces of a puzzle I didn't even know was incomplete. Last month, she sent me something in the mail. A small package wrapped in brown paper with her tearful handwriting on the label. Inside was a photograph I'd never seen before. It showed Harold and Margaret on their wedding day, standing outside that little white church, surrounded by family. Elizabeth was there, young and pretty, standing beside her sister. Harold's parents were there too. I recognized them from other photographs I'd seen over the years. Everyone was smiling, squinting into the sunshine, frozen in a moment of pure joy. On the back, Elizabeth had written, "For Ellen, so you can see where it all began." I cried when I saw it, but they were good tears, healing tears. I put that photograph in a frame and set it on the bookshelf in the living room, right next to our own wedding ring. Harold and Margaret, Harold and Ellen. 2 chapters of the same story. Sarah noticed it the next time she came to visit. "Mama," Sarah said, picking up the frame. "Is this?" "Yes, that's Margaret and your father on their wedding day." Sarah studied the photograph for a long time. I could see her taking in the details. Margaret's dress, Harold's smile, the joy on everyone's faces. "She was beautiful," Sarah said finally. She was. "And Daddy looked so happy." He was. They both were.
Sarah set the photograph back on the shelf, carefully, gently. Then Sarah looked at me with something like wonder in her eyes. "Are you really okay with this, aren't you, Mama? With all of it?" I thought about the question. It deserved an honest answer. "I am," I said. "It took me a while to get here, but yes, I'm okay." "How?" asked Sarah. "How did you get to this place?" I looked at the two photographs side by side. Harold with Margaret, Harold with me. Two loves, two lives, one man. I realized that love isn't a competition, I said slowly. It's not about being first or being best or being the only one. It's about being present, being there, showing up day after day and choosing each other over and over again. I turned to face my daughter. "Your father chose me, Sarah. He chose me every day for 30 years. Not because I was better than Margaret or because he loved me more, just because I was there. Because I was his. Because we built something together that mattered." Sarah's eyes were glistening. "That's beautiful, Mama. It's the truth. And the truth set me free." I've learned a lot in these past 6 months about Harold, about Margaret, about myself. But mostly, I've learned about forgiveness. Forgiveness isn't something that happens all at once. It isn't a decision you make and then it's done. It's a process, a journey. Some days you wake up and feel like you've got it all figured out. Other days the anger comes back, the hurt rises up, and you have to start all over again.
But you keep going. You keep choosing to let go, even when it's hard. You keep choosing to understand, even when understanding feels impossible. You keep choosing love over resentment, grace over bitterness, peace over pain. That's what I've been doing, day by day, step by step, choosing to forgive Harold for the secret he kept, choosing to forgive myself for the anger I felt, choosing to believe that our marriage was real, even if it wasn't perfect. Because nothing is perfect. No marriage, no person, no life. We're all just doing the best we can with what we have, carrying our secrets and our sorrows and our hopes and our fears. We're all just trying to survive. Harold survived. He survived the loss of his first wife, the grief that nearly destroyed him, and the fear of loving again. He survived by building a new life, a new family, a new love. And now I'm surviving too. Surviving the loss of my husband, the discovery of his secret, and the reshaping of everything I thought I knew. I'm surviving by learning, by growing, by opening my heart to a truth I never expected. We survive. That's what we do. That's what makes us human. I think about Harold all the time now. Not just the Harold I married, the quiet man with the calloused hands and the gentle eyes, but all the Harolds. The young man who fell in love with Margaret, the grieving widower who left everything behind, the cautious suitor who fumbled with his hat at the insurance office, the devoted father who coached Little League, the patient husband who brought me tea when I was sick. All of them were real. All of them were Harold, and all of them loved me. That's what I hold on to now. Not the secret, not the lies by omission, not the questions that will never be answered. Just the love, the steady, quiet, everyday love that Harold showed me for 30 years. That love was real. I know it was, and nothing I learned in that shoebox can take it away. I still talk to Harold sometimes, out loud, when I'm alone in the house, or silently, in my head, when I'm lying in bed at night. I tell him about my day, I ask him questions I know he can't answer. I say the things I wish I'd said when he was still alive. Mostly, I tell him I love him. I tell him I forgive him. I tell him I understand. And sometimes in the quiet moments just before sleep, I swear I can feel him there beside me. Not his body, that's gone forever, but his presence, his spirit, his love lingering in the space between us like the last notes of a song. Maybe that's wishful thinking. Maybe that's just an old woman's imagination conjuring comfort where there is none. But I don't think so. I think love survives. I think it outlasts death and secrets in time itself. I think Harold is still with me, in some way I can't explain, watching over me, waiting for me, loving me still. And I think Margaret is with him. I like to picture them together wherever they are. Not as rivals, not as competition, but as two souls who both loved the same man and were both loved in return. I like to think they're at peace. I like to think they're happy. I like to think that someday, when my time comes, I'll join them, and there won't be any jealousy or hurt or confusion, just love. Pure, simple, eternal love. That's what I believe now. That's what gets me through the hard days. Love survives. Love transforms. Love finds a way. The sun is setting now, turning the sky to fire. The first stars are appearing, faint pinpricks of light in the gathering darkness. The crickets are starting to sing, and somewhere down the street a dog is barking. It's a beautiful evening, the kind of evening that makes you grateful just to be alive. I rock slowly in my chair, feeling the familiar creak of the wood, the gentle motion that soothes my tired bones. I think about Harold. I think about Margaret. I think about Elizabeth, alone in her retirement community, carrying her own memories, her own grief, her own love. I think about Sarah and David and their children and the generations that will come after them. I think about the stories we pass down, the truths we tell, and the secrets we keep. I think about the complicated, messy, beautiful tangle of human love. And I feel grateful. Grateful for Harold, who loved me imperfectly but truly. Grateful for Margaret, who taught him how to love in the first place. Grateful for Elizabeth, who helped me understand. Grateful for my children, who stand by me even when the ground shifts beneath our feet. Grateful for life itself, with all its surprises and heartaches and unexpected gifts. I am 68 years old. I have lived a full life, a good life, a life rich with love and loss and everything in between. I have made mistakes and learned lessons and grown in ways I never imagined. And I am still learning, still growing, still becoming. That's the thing about secrets.